I don't know anything about.
Oh, I don't know. Well, like, they've also changed healthcare so much. So like, I knew it in the like
That's what like
nineties and two thousands. Now it's like, I'm not
to be.
yeah.
Let's not push it. And then for every holiday, people are like, let's try another round of cards. Imagine he just waiting what's going on. And he doesn't live in right. You just have a cat. Cards, like, yeah. Whatever, he's happy, he organizes them by color, and then runs over and it's like, I'm not used to this. How do you pronounce this right? What would happen if I did this minus that? And he knows it.
What's who's or which is his favorite Pokemon?
I think right now he's in the Charizard.
Okay, so that's a classic at least. So that's, yeah.
Wait a week and it'll be something else because he could choose pajamas with the hood, like, you know, ones you really get. I didn't even know pajama. My child is looking at his life size coat.
He was decorated for Halloween last year. And we have like these, like, what do you call those, like, it's like a blanket that you wear.
Sunny.
Yeah, it's kind of like a thingy, but it's got a Pokemon on it, so I have a Snorlax and you have Bulbasaur. That's amazing. Yeah, it's a very like.
We're gonna. We're a few minutes after, so. It's a pretty big TV, isn't it, buddy?
You gotta get going.
I feel like if we just stayed that. That would make the noise property.
Hey, Marcy, are we? Are we off mute? And I don't see what.
The meeting HQ is, that shows that that's where the camera feeds coming in. It is not showing as good, so.
Are we off mute? Yeah, I can talk. Yeah, okay, we're ready. Okay,
Thank you.
Here's. And it's not reading that, so. Somebody is.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order. Welcome to the Oak Park Public Library Board, with our new configuration in the next 2 years. Welcome everyone to, and congratulations to those who were elected this year. You will be at some point receiving a certificate suitable for framing. Congratulating you on your accomplishment of being victorious in elections. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Yes.
Trustee Rude,
Here.
trustee Fairfax. Here. Trustee Boss.
Here.
Trustee Rogers. Here. Trustee Bloom. Here. And trustee Van.
Here.
Thank you.
Trustee Chucker.
Then there would be questions. Excellent. Approval of the minutes from our March 28th regular meeting. Are there any questions or corrections regarding those minutes?
Well, the ones in the packet are
Yeah.
November. At least the ones I'm looking at. Unless I got the wrong ones.
What's I've seen are dated March 28th.
You got it?
So the date was wrong.
Yep, I see it. I got it. Okay.
Are there any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So.
Is there a second? Second. Moved by Monterina, seconded by Ted. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Noted 2 abstentions for Virginia and Mike. Thank you. Minutes are approved. Now moving on to public comments. Are any members of our guests here who'd like to make a comment? Great, but
Hello, everybody. My name is Rory O'Neill. And I respectfully request that what I say to you tonight be added to the board meeting minutes. My reason for speaking to you tonight is to place before you 2 specific questions that need to be asked of your administrators. These 2 questions need to be asked and answered publicly. I ask these 2 questions knowing full well that I cannot compel an answer. Both questions pertain to our library's contract with Alpha Building Maintenance Services and the contract year August 2021 through August of 2022. I ask these questions on behalf of the taxpayers of Oak Park. Question number 1 is to be asked of then interim director Lori Pulliam. On July the 20th, 2022, Lori Pulliam co-signed a check in the amount of $28,269.80. Did interim director Pulliam verify that the work was done as per contract? If so, who did she speak with and what was she told? Question number 2, and by far a much more important question, is to be asked of then Director of Operations, Jeremy Andrzejowski. From September 21 to August 2022, then Director of Operations, Jeremy Andrzejowski, signed check after check after check, 11 in all, for a total of $180,498.28. Did Jeremy Andrzejowski verify that the work was done as per contract? If so, who did he speak with and what was he told? Those 2 questions have a minimum value of at least $35,000. This is now the 4th consecutive month that I have brought that dollar amount to your attention. Ladies and gentlemen, I can personally verify to you tonight that that work was not done. I repeat, I can verify that that work was not done. Again, I ask that what I just said be added to the board meeting minute. I apologize for my voice being the way it is. Last month, you had technical difficulties and the public comments section was not recorded. I sat right over there wondering when one of you would have the presence of mind to extend the courtesy of giving me a microphone and giving me 3 additional minutes to speak my mind. That did not happen. The next time you have technical difficulties, I respectfully advise you to extend to the speaker the courtesy that you failed to show me. That's all I've got, folks. Thank you for hearing me out.
thank you. Are there any other in-person guests who would like to make a public comment? Would any of our virtual guests like to make a public comment at this time? I received an email requesting to be something to be read in by Miss Peggy Conley Madigan regarding a question regarding just I'm going to do my best to honor the request of the set of emails being read as her public comments. Good afternoon. At the beginning of 2023, it was asked during in-person public comments that the board adopt a policy requiring the trustees to answer polite logical questions emailed to them. Previously, the board president had stated that there was no policy in place preventing any trustees from responding to the sender's emailed questions. It has been observed that it was curious that there was a pattern experienced by multiple people that trustees simply did not reply to emailed questions in the summer fall 2022. It was then asked to reply to this request and acknowledge its receipt by 4:30. I responded to Ms. Carmen Madigan that no policy has been adopted requiring trustees to respond to questions. Respectfully, my truth. And then she replied to me, in as much as it was requested that such a policy be enacted, in as much as that was in January and it is now April. Please do read both your reply of this afternoon as well as the second email, all in chronological order today. The minutes show that the closing public comment sentences of January 2023 still applies today, April 24th, 2023. It seems absurd to have to ask for such a thing. Parentheses, response to a politely worded, logically constructed email question to an elected or Park Public Library Board of Trustees, close parentheses, but there it is. Are there any other public comments at this time? Hearing none, we will move on to our agenda of trustee comments and calendar. We have in the agenda the opening, the ribbon cutting for this week of the creative studio at 4:30 on Thursday. And then as well as the Day in Our Village, June 4th. And what we have typically done in the past years, as you mentioned here, the elected officials brunch. This is something we've done every other year when after following an election, when there are new boards, so that folks who have not had a chance to meet each other and not be new to the board will come on and get a chance to socialize prior to the day's festivities in the park. And then we'll also see item C, the June 18th, the Juneteenth parade and the 4th of July parade. Justin, could we have send like a block of time, set of times that you would like trustees to be present for Day in Our Village? And let people sign up for when they could be available to, if they're available to help staff the booth and be available. And then of course in May or June we'll talk about in the May meeting we can coordinate the get more details about the Juneteenth parade and then in June the 4th of July parades and participation. Any trustee comments?
Do they have a theme for Day in Our Village? Yeah.
I haven't heard of him.
Okay. No, I was just curious. Just in.
And then you asked about following that up on the farmer's market.
Yes.
We did get a reply, so we'll send some dates. And then you all can sign up. So they will know.
Yeah, like a doodle poll or something for the chart.
So we, for the farmers market, Justin, we're still thinking about one day, right?
That's what.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what we got last time.
Except for you, you have to.
I'm sure.
Yes.
It's a very specific kind of rule, isn't it?
Right. We will move on to the executive director report.
Thank you. You have my report in the packet. I'll just do some highlights. I won't read it verbatim, of course, but just some highlights from March. I mentioned this in March, but it happened finally when we coordinated our first C4 for libraries. So I met with area libraries to talk about our eco responsibility, what we can do, like grants we can apply for, what we can do in terms of the buildings, with LED lights, that sort of thing. So it was a great meeting. I also had a meeting with the village and talking about this too, and they want to help us add more libraries to this. So I'm looking forward to that. We plan to meet bi-monthly and just share. And so far we got great. We give each other tips. We shared vendors that we know. So it's been pretty helpful. And it's nice that we are doing more than we thought we were doing. So it was nice to hear, oh, okay, yeah, we do that. Yeah, we have that. So that did happen. It came out of the C4 meeting in January where we talked about that. Ted has mentioned it a few times. And they asked us to plant C4 where you are. So whether that's the library, the village, what have you. So I took up that call for sure. So we are meeting. We also had a meeting to discuss the draft resolution for the book sanctuary. Thank you again for Virginia to give us that nudge. Chicago Public Library has modeled how to create a book sanctuary, so we're using that template. So I did meet with the village manager who is very interested in having the village create a book sanctuary. So just like you guys got sworn in tonight, we just said wait till the swearing in is happening. So we've been playing a little bit of tag because I know it's a busy time. So we just have a follow-up meeting of what that's going to look like. I may come to a village hall meeting and talk to the village about it. It may be an ordinance, not sure, but I'm glad the village manager is on board to move forward with that. Because it's coming here too. We've had little nudges of some challenges to our books and questions about like what we bought, what we've taken out. So we think it can happen here. It can. So it is National Library Week. The freedom to read is part of the theme for this week, so it's appropriate. So I'm glad that's moving along. And then I just want to highlight the 14th was a crazy, crazy day. So I had you commented on my badge and had the daily bagel. So I did go to the speed networking events at Concordia University. I was able to share about connect how businesses could use the book bike and also our business library services. And so they were really happy to hear about that. Also shared with the Creator Studio, ways that they can use that to promote their small businesses. And so I did get 2 or 3 follow-ups after that, where the business library, Bridget was able to connect with them as well as Sarah for some openings, some grand openings, some work people could do for research on their business. So it was very fruitful, and I won the raffle of the small businesses in the area. So that was really good. Also that same night at the very same time, there was a Chicago Literary Hall of Fame event at Dominican University, where Harriet Gilliam Robinette was honored with the Fuller Award. So we got to have a quote where we had congratulations. We were one of the partners in that event. And so we had our collection development manager come, Kathleen attended too. I saw some of friends of our library, so that was a great event too. And last thing I want to highlight really quickly on my report, Chicago Public Library visited on the 20th. So they want the architects, the original architects of this building. They might have some plan up their sleeve that they're working on that they wanted to see our building. So we had a walk through, which we were a little nervous about because we've had so many changes in the 20th year. We joked that they would say, oh, and this is great, it's not here anymore. They actually said that's really good because that just shows the building is adaptable. After 20 years, you can move walls. So it's just it's a testament to the thoughtfulness that went in with the staff, the board, the architects in making the building valuable. So it's not outdated and people continue to change. So it was the first time I got to meet the commissioner, Chris Brown. So that was fun. I don't know if you saw in the news up that Chicago Public got that $2 million building grant. So he invited me to that. So I got to, yeah, that was nice. So, I call them our big brother to the north. So it was a nice connection to make with them. And he said there's something else that we can get a partner on. So I'm glad to have that connection with Chicago Public since, they are maybe right next door. Yeah, so that was a fun day that we had with them. So moving on, the other thing I had highlighted I included Rob Simmons, our Director of Social Services and Public Safety, his report. Just to kind of circle back to our unhoused population and the progress that we make when they come in and how Rob connects with them. So you can see we have 32 patrons served in various ways, from mental health services to affordable housing to early childhood connections. So you can see that that's just for the month of March. The other really cool thing is we have a partnership with the University of Northwestern University to create an app for teens in order to manage their anxiety. So I think that's really exciting that Rob has been a part of that, representing the library. And we've had our teens here be like in that control room to test it out. So just wanted to highlight that because I think it's exciting. Also, the body camera pilot. If you recall, I bought that maybe back in February. We talked about we were piloting that. So just for a recap, our public safety officers do have body cameras. They don't walk around with them all the time. They turn them on if something happens or if something, just so we make sure we're operating, putting our restorative practices into practice. And the case when, and then we have to call the police and we have a record of what happened. And so actually using that just in this short time, there was a 38% decrease in incident reports. So just the visual of having them on is very helpful. I don't see them come across my desk as much, which is great. And so the recommendation is just to continue with them having their body cameras on. Just a reminder too, when you walk in, you'll see a message right on the door that we report all the time. We report when you're at a meeting. When you walk in, we have from the door to when you enter places, we're always recording. So it's nothing new, it's on the body as needed. So and then lastly, really also really cool. There was an article published on our public safety model, our social services and public safety model in Public Library Quarterly. So I hope you had a chance to look at that link. I think that's really exciting too, that people are looking at our model of how we do our public service and our social services here and replicating in other libraries across the country. So again, I hope you had a chance to check that out. Any questions so far? I'll take a breather for a second.
Rob, under a number of cases, it says 4 patrons received homelessness. What does that mean? So at short term.
Wait, they can't hear you. Yeah.
That's a great question. So those 4 individuals needed short-term emergency housing right away. So usually there are at least co-occurring issues, but that was the predominant need of having that person ask for overnight shelter. So there was 4 people, we had to connect them.
So they didn't receive homelessness, they received shelter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh.
Another quick question, if somebody is seeking more than one of these services, are we counting those twice on the metrics or just?
No, just one. So there's no duplicated, no duplicated entry points. So it's just the
Whatever the primary reason was.
primary, that's what we're counting.
Okay.
What's the early childhood referral? Is that the collaboration or?
Sometimes, the last month there were developmental disabilities, some other challenges. So a lot of parents will like a neutral resource or source other than the school. So it's nice that we can have, an additional community-based resource. We can link them to some resources around that.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
As a follow-up to Justin's comment about in her report, on the draft resolution for Port Sanctuary, there is a bill moving through Springfield, and that is the report of support of the Secretary of State and the Illinois Library Association regarding availability to remain eligible for certain state grants. Your library a public library has to adopt certain policies around not having any vending of books. And the Library Bill of Rights, I believe, is also identified in there, and it has been passed by the House. It is up for, I believe, passage by the Senate tomorrow. I have reached out to the Secretary of State's office and the governor's office to offer, should the bill become law, knock on wood, the Oak Park Library as a venue for the signing of the bill. You know, putting it out there, making, saying, we would be interested in hosting you. And hopefully they will take us up on that, but that's up to them. They may have other ideas. They may want to go to a library, perhaps like Downers Grove, in a library that has been targeted by such things where we have not had such active issues yet. So we are a very book friendly and open collection friendly library. And so I wanted to put that out there to them, that I wanted, just so everybody is aware of that. And if you have any, connections with friends who work in the Secretary of State's office or the governor's office, give them a nudge. We have great visuals. We have, the Union Temple out of here. We have the park on the 3rd floor windows. We have really good, this would be an excellent spot. So
What's the house building where the Senate bill?
The what?
Bill number. Never mind, forget I asked.
No, I've got it. I have it in the emails. I just can't remember off the top of my head.
I can-
I'm tracking many pieces of legislation right now for writing the job, so it's.
Fair enough.
So you said that we have been receiving some challenges, and I was wondering if you could say more.
Sure. We had two book reconsiderations recently. One was for her Camden book, and another one was a book that was it's basically anti-trans, to be honest. So we did add the Kirk Cameron title. We did not add the other one because it doesn't support what we're about, which is the library for all. And then we had someone ask for like the last 3 or 4 years of everything that we ever purchased, and then everything that we discarded in the last 3 years. So it was probably about 300 spreadsheets long plus. And we had a great response from Jeremy, who drafted the FOIA response, which, we do discard things, we have to, we can't keep everything we have owned. And because we discarded, it doesn't mean that we, we're editing it out to ban something ourselves. It could have been torn, it could have been damaged. So that was said in there too, just to quantify this. So I feel like, it's obvious, those kind of questions are those kind of things I'm saying. It's how those efforts start. So those are two
Yeah,
that I've had
they're-
reason.
We're paying close attention to certain ways.
And try to create a narrative of, again, I think a really great answer is crafted. Like, it's not discarded because we are banning anything or taking anything out. There's a reason, and that's just part of our collection development. And we are willing to listen. We did take one of the books, but we did. So those are the two. So I'm really excited about the book sanctuary and the state of what it has coming forward, because I think it's so opposite of what's going on in the rest of the country, which is great. And I'm glad we have that strong foundation of, especially during National Library Week, Freedom to Read. So key.
And Banned Books Week is in like September, right?
I think so. September, October, what? Yeah, it's in the fall, for sure. ALA just published its chapter 2 of banned books from 2022. So if you want to look that up, they have that list, which we did share also on our page. Okay, so continuing on with my report.
Wait, also, what did you put in your wrap?
Oh my goodness. I got a stack of gift certificates so I could try all the small businesses in town.
Right.
So I did one lake, I got Fort Bills. I got one to the, I keep them in here, to the, you saw my daily bagel. I got one to the escape room that's in town, to the Good Earth, which is perfect and timely. So it was amazing. It was under my chair. I had the golden ticket under my chair at the end of it. So since I'm, since I'm new coming back, I really appreciate it. So like getting to know the small business in town, was so documenting all, putting together, tagging.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It was well worth the effort, and just the local library small business was awesome. So I don't know if when you came in, you saw the Ramadan display in the idea box. It is Ramadan through April 28th. So we were proud to celebrate that in support of our engagement, learning, stewardship, anti-racism efforts in action. Also, we did have a drag story time on March 18th. Where we had 23 kids and 25 adults who enjoyed that story time.
I missed that.
Oh, we'll do it again.
Sure. Good, I mean, you had a full roster, right? Like I tried to book everything, so now.
Yeah, it was a full house. And then, I don't know if we had a plant swap, which was really cool too, again, in support of our echo efforts in the community. And then, I think you saw the really nice picture of the JCLC trip, the Joint Librarians of Color Conference, which was postponed because of COVID. And so they went this year. So we were able to send people from all different parts of the library, and not just librarians. It was from people from children's, people from adult services, from the accounting department, from our CE departments. So in total, we had, I want to say, almost 20 people went, 17 people. How many went? 12? 12 people. So thank you, Stephen. Oh, it's right here. 12 people were able to attend. They did give us feedback on their experiences. We shared some of their comments. So that was exciting. The only other note I'll say too, when you look at the budget, because it happened this year, when we get to that part, it's a little higher than usual, but it's not because they did anything wrong. It's just, it ended up being in this year. So I'm just giving you that heads up when you see it, because it was supposed to be last year.
We'll forget in time to ask.
Okay, so really quickly, looking at the data, you might notice it's exactly the same in the first two sets. The data didn't pop up yet. You'll have it in May. Like it didn't, the platform didn't correlate it, so we don't have the Q1 for this year yet. So that's why it looks exactly the same. So just focusing on the meeting room usage. I don't know if you saw the write-up in there, but our meeting room usage is exploding. And it looks like what's happening is more of the nonprofits and local organizations are using it versus for-profit entities using our, and you can see using our meeting rooms, so you can see the data there. It's gone up like astronomically. So like Jack and Jill Western Cook is a big user. We've had the Community Mental Health Board, Oak Park, and I am really happy. I've seen it. So a lot of our coalitions and the entities within the village who come together and do things are using us too. We have a meeting this week. I know I have a Rob this week. Rob's there. With the homeless coalition, right, in our building. So people are using our resources here for their meetings, which is fantastic.
I was a little surprised because I guess in my head, I thought, okay, winter's gonna end and, you know, digital usage will go down while meeting room, like people, and they're just, everything's.
Yeah.
Just, that's really encouraging. It's encouraging to see both like digital resources and program attendance both going up simultaneously. So that's really nice.
Yes. And then you saw the additions and terminations. One highlight we did, again, going back to sustainability and being responsible for our planet and being really mindful and intentional about it. We did hire a full-time environmental programming specialist, Christine. So that was one of our full-time hires. It was an internal promotion as well. So I just wanted to highlight that one for you. And I think that's about it for me. Any other questions on any of that? Any of all of that I shared? All right, so we do have a staff speaker as always, and so that is Marsheen. Marsheen, if you don't know, Elizabeth is actually retiring. Was our director of facilities and IT, and so Matt Bertolini and Marsheen, what's your last name, Marsheen? Because will be stepping into the director role, so that's why they're here. So you had a report from Matt last time. Marsheen, you want to come up? And then he's going to provide highlights of what's been happening in the past year, as you heard from Marlene. So it'll be the IT folks for this time. Yeah, you have to come here because we can't hear you at home. Okay. Okay. What is it, what? Why don't you just talk to us about, just talk to us.
So my name is Marcin Terlik. I'm manager of technology. And I would like to share with you a few updates that we plan to do. First is we set our phone system on the all floors to notify the 911 calls. So when the call is made, the 911 is notified from which floor the call was made. So I hope this will speed up arrival time and especially like in ambulance team. So that's like big improvements regarding security. The next thing I would like to share with you is we do ongoing network configuration and improvements. We try to catch up with technology, and I think that's changing over the time. We also set the new computers on the second floor for middle school and for the high school. The next big project that we planned for this year is to replace the patch panel in our data room. On each floor, we have data rooms where all network connection are distributed to the floors. So the patch panels are in kind of bad shape. They are different apart. So this will be a project for this year with the RFP. And also we do phishing campaigns for library. So there's a lot of like emails, phishing emails right now. So for last year, we do campaign to build awareness to the staff how to recognize phishing emails. The next thing is the BBS Creative Studio. So now this month we'll finalize our project. We plan to open Creative Studio for the community. Here I want to thank you like everyone because it's a collaboration of all teams. I want to thank like facility teams for helping fixing audio booth, for assembling everything, also for the security team for help with that process. communication for help with design, wall painting, and also for website information that are going to the website. Creative technology team, they actually create everything, the equipment list, and there was like a huge brainstorming to actually make this happen. And also for the information technology team to assemble everything, to connect and implement our equipment. So thank you, everyone. That's a huge project. It took us over a year to accomplish. I hope it will be like beneficial for our community. In like from the highlights in Creative Studio, we'll have 3D printers. We'll have laser cutters. We'll also have audiobook. We'll have the tech preservation station when you can convert VHA tape, the negative, and also like old tapes to digital version. And we will have also poster printing that people will be able to print large items. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
I think the community will, you mentioned the digital conversion, that technology piece, and I was reminded of an event, an ILA event that I went to with Colleen, and someone was talking about a similar tech piece at their library where they captured transitioned something to DVD that had been on a VHS from that was very, very old. And I forgot what the significant event of it was, but it was a recording of a speech, of a live speech of a significant figure. I'm blanking on how you might remember. I all over there, but it was a great moment of the library being able to share how they could help preserve history, carry it forward, and share it with the community, because the person also was willing to make another copy of it for the library to have as part of their collection. So I think this is something that, once we share that with the community people, I know my dad has a ton of VHS that there might be something in there that I would want to have digitally, transferred, some family video. So it's just, I think that's going to be, the whole project is wonderful, but I think it's going to be, and I think has the potential to really help, share, preserve some family memories and family records. So glad to hear it. The whole project is very exciting.
And to make those resources available to people who aren't going out.
Yeah.
Be able to go out and buy the go to the service that we exist already.
Yeah.
That.
You mentioned there's an audio book as well. I remember when I started on the board, that was one of the first things people were talking about, is like, ooh, these people doing fun stuff. So it's very, very nice to like feel that come full circle and see that come to fruition. I'm very, very excited. I'm excited to see what the community does with it, because if I know Oak Park and Oak Parkers, like it'll take about 6 months before something really fun and exciting to come out of that space. You get to be part of it. It's gonna be awesome.
So this Thursday, we have a grand opening, ribbon cutting at 4:40 p.m. So please join us. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy.
Is there any cost associated with like the 3D printing and the poster printing? Like, how does that work for?
So on our website, we have a form, so our members will be able to send files, and our creative technology will print it out and it will be ready for pickup. And the same process works with printing large
There's just no cost, like.
No, there's only like limitation, how many jobs you can print per month.
Yeah, that makes sense. So there's like a limit on how much you can. Okay.
Isn't the library great?
I mean, it really, I knew the answer is no, but I was like, there's gotta be the cash.
So it was recently, my wife gave me a free printer for Christmas. So it was, I've had a lot of fun with it. It's incredibly versatile and there are so many free designs out there and resources for that. But it's like, oh, this looks awesome. Oh, this is gonna take 30 hours to print, so that, when you look at these things, these are models that are getting printed. Each layer is, a couple, millimeters thick, is like 1 or 2 millimeters thick per layer. At a time, so that's, a thing to take into account for this, but yeah, it's amazing, it's fun.
Really cool. I think of like the materials, like getting posters printed for work is like so expensive, so. Things like that.
Material is not that expensive for it, I mean, depending on what you want to get, a single color is not that bad, but they have some really cool, color choices, multicolored filaments, different materials that are better for heat things and stuff like that, flexible filaments. The things will be like, squishy once they're printed, so.
And so the time, it's really like the person submits their thing that they want printed, and then it might take like 10
We
hours.
come back and pick it up.
So then there's like a log of people expecting things. Cool, I bet I wonder what the demand's gonna be like.
Can't wait to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have there been conversations with the schools about having schools? interacting with it, or-
We do have some like school children use it. We have a Girl Tech program, so that's that. And then we did have a recommendation to think about our older adults too, and having programming for them as well. So, I mean, like, it's just limitless. I can see some field trips coming. I'm excited.
Right, in retired folks who have more time, who have that time.
It's tech savvy and that'd be
Also
awesome.
need replaces to connect, that's excellent.
And what's, did you see the, I can't remember, there was a post on Facebook somewhere about somebody raving about the creative studio at the library, already just a couple of weeks now. Or just like really excited about that.
We have a nice RSVP for that, and we are doing with that, the Chamber of Commerce too, so we're having our own women time. So again, it's another chance to engage with small businesses in the community, as well as, the community at large, kids, older adults, all that stuff, so. It's been like a lot of months in the making, right, at least 7, right?
Like a project,
Yeah.
yeah, we started like in 2021, like in the plan.
Is there anything out of there now that we have the packet that you wanted to highlight? That just, I know and it is nerve wracking when things don't work. But I don't know if you just wanted an opportunity to, or if you guys wanted to ask any questions now that you have the visuals.
So if you see on the slide, for example, for the patch panels, you will see what's the shape of it. So
Yeah, I really appreciate having the visuals. We'll have to find out later. That's how we cover it, but it's really helpful.
I don't know if you noticed that the middle school section just got their own computers too. I'm not sure if I've seen that.
I mentioned how
Yes. So that's exciting.
So not to talk about sad things, but can you tell us more about the phishing attempts?
oh, so this is kind of simulation that we do. In order like to build awareness, so people know how to recognize red flags and so that we do the campaign, and also we do the training that was happening every month.
I know I love getting those phishing attempt emails at work. I stare at them long and hard. Don't know if there's a problem with my Verizon.
Yeah, I just saw the planning of that in the future, I didn't work out. On the east side of the building, then there's like that. My favorite was to work it out. The pandemic. Like, we know how that's one of the time. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the staff reports? Before we move on to pages. Yeah. Hearing none. We have our financial reports. Jeremy started on page 19.
Any questions?
You wanna just walk through some things?
Um, Yeah, I was happy to see that we did start receive the rest of the 2021 tax levy. So that was good. Gets our operating cash up quite a bit. We did also in this current month received an additional like 2.8 million. So we should be solid going through the third quarter this year. So that's really good news. And then hopefully the second installment later in this year will be on time. And we'll be back on schedule with our tax revenues. I did add in there too, I believe it was Adarima, I think you asked about the corporate property replacement tax last month. So I gave a little more information on that. We do consistently get that every year, but it did drop off quite a bit during the pandemic, and then it bounced back quite a bit last year. So we'll keep an eye on that, but that's where we budget. I think it was typically about $150,000. I dropped it down last year because previous year was weak, but then last year was quite a bit more. So that's when start moving it up. We'll try and even that out to smooth out any expectations for the budget revenue on there. There's not a whole lot of unusual expenses this in March. And I think most of the unusual expenditure levels. I think if you look at you start getting into the income and expenditure report on page 29. And you can see some of the details on the revenue and expenditures, where they're budgeted for the year. Now, those we don't distribute those. Like insurance, you could really set that up so it shows 100% expended because we pay that up front. So that's prepaid at the beginning of the year. So the last column there, budgeted year to date, received and expended. That's basically distributed out through the 12 months evenly. But it does give us some measure going through the year to see kind of where we're at. So you'll see on the people side, that's right on target, 25%, and we're through the first quarter, 25%. So those are the numbers I think kind of keep an eye on. There's, as Jocelyn mentioned earlier, the staff development and the travel, you'll see that at 50%, 52% expended. And that's on page 29 too. That in large part is due to the JCLT conference that was expected for last fall. So that was expended in February this year. So that was, I think it was about $25,000-$30,000 for all of that. And that went into this year. And so the leadership team is taking a look at that and we're approving any of the other expenditures within that account line.
make sure that we end up on target this year. So we're managing through that. Insurance, like I said, prepaid, that shows high, but that will even out over the year. Same with workers' comp, which is weighted towards the beginning of the year, and that evens out. So the one budget line, I think that I mentioned in the March report as well, that well, keep an eye on, I'll work with Matt on that. Matt Bartoggi, that is, to keep an eye on that, is the natural gas. You'll see that's expended at 44% this year, and that is just rising costs. And we did increase the budget this year, expecting higher fuel costs. But that's a lot more than we expected. Now that does bounce back, you typically drops down over the summer months for the seasonality. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and see how much that will recover. And then as we get into the fall, then it will bounce back up again. So we'll keep an eye on that.
So these like April days of 20 degrees aren't for the public.
No,
I knew I was upset about that.
No,
for some reason.
I know
For bad
Matt,
reasons.
Matt did mention when he presented in February, was it, or March? March, wants to play quickly. That about the way we're implementing our air handling and how we do that. And so there may be some different things that we have to look at, which if we use it as it was designed originally, that could impact our natural gas, increase the natural gas costs going forward. But I know Matt's working on that to figure out exactly what we need to do to better manage the temperature in the building throughout the year, so it's evenly a little more temperate, so we don't have the really hot fans blowing around. So Matt's working on that as well. But that's the one budget line that I think is kind of a flag, yellow flag maybe for us to keep an eye on. The rest of it, most of it is managing it. A lot of it's within our operating control. Some of those are a little high. Equipment and supplies, I know Martine's looking at that. So that's something that, and that's a small amount as well. So we'll keep an eye on that. And most of these other expenditure lines, capital budget is typically low this time of the year. As we plan, get ready for projects. The big one, of course, is the chiller replacement, and that'll come in the fall. Hopefully, before third quarter. Yeah, and that'll be about 250,000, 240, something like that. So Matt's got more details on that, and I'm sure you'll hear about it as we get closer. But that was as soon as we could get it going with supply chain.
On the subscriptions and services for our additional services, it looks like we're already nearing 50%. Is that just based off of the pay schedule? Or are we gonna be far out of our
No.
budget?
That too, we should be on target. I know Martine and Barbara are both very good at their budgets, managing those and planning those. A lot of those are prepaid contracts.
Okay.
So we're paying up front. But yeah, I don't think any of these other lines are expected to be over at this point in the year. I can't foresee anything like that. All right, any other questions on that? And like I said, as you go through, starting on page 33, you look at those are individual checks that were written. So if there's ever anything in there that you have questions on, let me know. Typically, I'll go through if there's an unusual check as I'm signing them, and I'll review this too each month to see if there's anything that stands out as like an unusual repair or major project. And I didn't see anything that was that interesting or unusual for this month. So that's kind of typical this time of year as projects get ramped up.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Jeremy. And with that, our move on to the approval of the disbursements journal. Resolution. Are there any questions about that? That begins on page 33 and runs through. 63. For the cash disposal, and then management report on 64. Are there any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Christina, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Virginia. Any further questions or discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. It is approved. Thank you. Additional reports I got.
I know the main thing is that May 6th, there will be an event, that is for, elected officials and if there are people, staff who would like to them as well about social media. And how governing bodies can interact with social media, and is. I can't think of who's doing it. On the one. But I'll send out information. We don't have the complete details.
Okay.
So that should be something useful. That's pretty much that. Okay. Hey, Matt, do we need a second person for our?
We will, and that will be determined as the, as follow-up to, the election of new board officers.
Okay.
That we will do in May. And then the new board the board president, asks for volunteers.
Okay.
So, anybody who would like to be one of our 2 representatives to iGov, going forward, give it some thought. We'll have some of those questions will be coming up in the next couple of meetings. Council of Governments has not met. Yeah, it was rescheduled and then rescheduled again. So that should have a report for the May meeting unless it's been rescheduled again. An agreement.
Yes, Planet Green, I appreciate the help with Matt and Jocelyn being a part of the Planet Green team. And I think that one of the interesting things that happened in the last meeting was to realize that the library can be a conduit for so much information that is coming out. And an example of that is that there is a program with a solar engineering company that will provide assistance to low and moderate income buildings in the village. And there's low hanging fruit, there's money there that's available. And we will have that featured here at the public library, so that people will know about it and can find out about it.
Perfect, thank you. Friends of the library.
I think there's one update that we will start collecting on, is it May 1st for the donations? Oh, June 1st, let me not say May. So specifically for the books sale on June 1st. So that is probably the most major update since the last time we talked about what's going on with Friends.
Okay. And then just as an official thing, Justin sent out an email about the webinar, correct, for sort of like a new trustee, an annual trustee workshop. So if you, what was that again?
So this was the in-person
Okay.
at Alston Marriott Library. So that one is a mock. What's interesting in that one, they're gonna have a mock one. I want to go just to see that, like the acting. You know, I mean, I'm like, act super obnoxious, but I think it's a good one. There is a virtual one too, which I did put on here too.
Yeah.
But that one,
Too.
what did you say?
I think the virtual one is doing a mock.
Is it?
I think so.
Like a mock meeting.
Like, I don't think, right?
Okay, so you have 2 options, you know, you can do one in person, you can do one virtually too. So this one is, where's the date?
Is the 20th.
The 20th for the one in person, and then the virtual one, it was a series of meetings, so.
Yeah, it's like, May 13th is the next one.
And that 13th one is about effective meetings. So Maya, I don't think you got these yet, so I'll be sure to send them to you. So you can either attend the virtual one or the one in person. It's always good to learn, even if you've been a trustee for a while or been a librarian before, you can always learn new tips and tricks.
And I should have mentioned this during the calendar section and trustee comments. We'll be looking to do a board retreat, sort of like a half day thing here at the library, probably strategic planning discussions, strategic goals. And we'll be identifying sending out some potential dates for folks to send some feedback. To see what we'll do that, kind of get together. Look at our strategic plan, really kind of see if we want to keep sort of the framework that it currently is. Do we want to come at it from a different thing, and also work with Jocelyn on getting ideas of what her vision is, and kind of feedback of ours and hers, and getting things ready as we move into our budget season. So, you know, our budget process is not nearly as painful as others.
Sure. Or as for Jen, it's not as painful for us.
Thanks.
How do you make it for Jen?
Thankful for the things, it's not painful for the board, thanks to the hard and capable work of our staff.
Yes.
So just keep, that will be something as we move forward, doing for
What
that.
kind of time frame were you thinking about? Like, sorry, is that,
In terms of like what calendar days,
or yeah, like, or are we saying the next couple of months? Are we saying?
probably, we were gonna be.
I'll be gone in May for the meeting, but not to the end. So
Yeah, because I was thinking of sure, yeah, probably June. It'll probably the weekends following day in our village. Because we'll vote on board officers in May. And then convene from there. Would be the idea, but of course. Then open to feedback on that as well. Right.
And that would be an open meeting though, too, right?
It would be an open meeting, because we would be discussing library business. So,
Interesting to have a retreat be open, but I understand.
Yeah.
June is hard, July is hard, these are hard months coming up for me, but I'll find a way.
I understand,
They're like
me as well.
packing in all this travel and then I have to learn for family, all that.
Yeah, retreat may not be the best term, but like strategic planning sessions would probably be a closer.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah, no,
You tell me this, right?
not, and that's like should boy again. Oh,
Thank you. That's so cute.
certainly would have been no idea there. I guess the budget line for board support will be a little higher. All right, in that vein, we'll move on to new business. No, we have other unfinished business to do first. We have, do we have any closed meeting minutes to review? No. We have some staff comments regarding the holiday discussion. Do we want to go over have any further discussion at tonight, or do we want to revisit this at a later date when we start start doing budget for next year, or later that I'll defer to the rest of the board, and that we want to
I don't know that I want to defer and try to do this while we do budget.
Okay, happy to have it now, but it's like, I don't know, did everybody get a chance to read through all the feedback from the staff and what, if people are ready to have a.
I'd like to have some contextualization for the staff comments, like how they came about, where did it come from, was there a solicitation for it?
Yes.
Who were they from, how are they ordered, all of that.
So, heard your charge at the last meeting to solicit feedback from staff. So, I put a message in our story that we'd be asking that. We had the management team and the leadership team go back to their staff. And when we had our meeting, they carried back their comments from their staff. And so I literally just wrote down everything that everybody said while we were in the meeting. And I collated it here. So, and then we discussed in our meeting too amongst ourselves. And, I mean, it was interesting. It was, some of the things were unexpected. I don't know what you all thought about the responses. And we've gotten some response back, kind of that parallels this from patrons as well, especially around Easter. Easter, I didn't realize Easter was such a hot button. You know, we talked a lot about Thanksgiving and Christmas, but people have some feelings around Easter. We don't currently have it as a day off. And it is one that a lot of our staff, especially with our efforts in hiring more BIPOC populations, I mean, Easter is a thing. And for those who don't celebrate it, they're kind of left holding the bag, so to speak, to cover. And because as the supervisor, you hate to tell someone if they ask for their floating holiday for that day, no, you can't take it. And it's not a busy day. So that's one that pulled it to the top that I was surprised about. And again, we've had patrons also write me some letters and say, you know, you highlighted Ramadan, which is fine, and I'm not mad at that, but you know, don't also forget about Easter. Did you celebrate Easter? Did you give that same? So that gave me, you know, some food for thought too. You know, people do want, you know, they are welcoming of diverse holidays, but it doesn't, you know, they also want to have the Christmas, the Easters, and Thanksgivings included. So
So on that point about Easter and Ramadan is something that's not a closed day at the library, a holiday. That's something that's kind of marked in materials or an event or that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that, you know, it seems like for Easter, there might be a parallel to that.
the other thing they said,
Ramadan's like a month long.
Yeah.
So.
but on that thought, if you notice, they said about spring break, if we follow spring break, a lot of times they overlap in terms of these being the same month, if not the same exact days. So then that's one comment I think that was in there, and be an opportunity to, you know, maybe you can't have a month for, we can't close a month, but you can have some days that you didn't have to use your floating holidays. And, you know, you celebrate as you wanted to, and then we are avoiding calling or renaming things, we just call it a spring break. So that was an idea that was in there.
The other thought I had when, you know, BIPOC and Easter is that, indigenous, you know, Easter is something that may be, you know, more, on the colonial side of that, so just to keep.
But this is the feedback from the staff.
Right.
This is something that the staff has said is valid for them.
This is.
No, it's okay. No, I was gonna say that, like, I think that obviously we have feedback, you're seeing parallels, feedback that we're getting from the community. And we should obviously take it very seriously. I just don't know that it's helpful to like talk about Ramadan and Easter to get, do you know what I mean? Like in a competitive sense, like it's just, I don't think we can just acknowledge that that's coming up, but not sort of reproduce that in our own conversations. We can just, in our conversations, think about what's useful for the library, you know, what we want to set forward without making it seem competitive. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I understand that this is really thorny and fraught, and it's, but I think that our job as like leadership in general can just be that we take that, we hear that, and then we try and
restructure it to where we're like listening to the most number of people and what it is that they need without having it be competitive.
I first want to say thank you to leadership, because I know it's not always easy to get. Some of these comments were probably really hard to hear from your staff members and then have to come and repeat verbatim back to Jocelyn. So I appreciate that all of you did that and spoke up for your teams. I don't know that I have fully digested all of this, because some of it is a little bit counter to what I think we were expecting to hear back. So I would like to revisit it, maybe as part of a strategic plan, maybe later in the summer. But I also know that you and the leadership team are starting to do more frequent reviews of policies. So I'm wondering if, because the comments and how I believe we will end up handling holidays is going to be very tied to who our current staff is. Can we as a board just decide this is something we have to review as a policy more often than maybe some other things? And maybe we have to look at it more often as the population of our employees change. Because I think we had some valid concerns in the things we were trying to do, but that doesn't seem to be meeting the needs of the population of our staff right now. And that's, I'm concerned about both. The only thing I can think is if we just keep looking at it more often. Then as the population changes or as the opinions change, we can align with the staff that's here.
I think you're putting it in practice now, like just how we're engaging, not in October and September, like we're talking about it, but we have time for the whole year to, before we lead up to what we planned on. So I think that's a step in the right direction, in terms of trying to get this right.
I'm also wondering if there's a way to get feedback, that, like, it's really wonderful to get kind of, just comments from people, but it's hard to have kind of an overview. And that's why I was asking like how they were broken down and who they're from, and that's really, because I don't mean specific people, but just, like toward the bottom, there seemed to be more comments that seemed more like what we expected, and at the beginning, there seemed to be some more, surprises, and I feel like there's kind of an apples and oranges, it's very useful to have anecdotal. And I don't know if there might be a better way to, or just another way, another step of getting, input. Virginia, it's an interesting idea, thinking about who our staff is, because that's when I started reaching out to smaller orgs that were taking on this issue. That's how they approach it, but they're nonprofit orgs that are small and that are not a public space. So then they completely each year kind of align when their days are with who their staff and what they need. It's just a different, we've got kind of a different situation here. So
I think we also have to realize like we're doing a little back work as well, because I don't know the last time that holidays were visited as a policy. So I think we're maybe doing a little bit more lifting than if we did this on a regular basis and this became a more road thing for us to do and to ask the staff and the community about. I also think that people are probably very, very aware of how they spend their holidays after having 2 years where they could not do that. So I think a lot of these, how do I spend my time? Who can I spend it with? I think it's a lot more present in the minds of both our community and our staff. And that might be why our temp check was a little bit off. But again, if this is something we decide to, every year in June, we look at how, like, if we start doing this on a more regular basis and we align with, what we're hearing from the community and what we're hearing from leadership and what they're hearing from their staff, I think eventually we'll level off somewhere. I don't know that we're going to get like perfect right out of the gate on this set of holidays.
I do, I appreciate what you're saying, Virginia, and it reminds me that like, one of the I don't know about central, but one of the things that our conversation around holidays has centered around was the idea that staff don't get a break. When was it from?
In January until, Memorial Day, which is in May, yeah.
So that's like, you know, and I feel like as we're continuing the more broad process of like looking at it more regularly and having, there's like an immediate issue that we could maybe address. Do you know what I mean? That would be, because I think we were all agreed that that sounds crazy. That sounds like untenable, and that we want to be able to do something like that. So I think that we could
Like start there.
start there, you know, and
That's one thing that,
not like sidetrack the whole, not table the whole conversation, but just have.
that is one thing, just to piggyback on what you're saying, a lot of people that, and something's repeated. Align with state and federal, and then we start there,
Yeah,
and then, you know, if we want to do a deeper dive, you have the opportunity to do that, but, that will address one of the issues that came to light with this, which is the long stretch. Then unless you use your own vacation time, you will be here every day, 7 days a week. I mean, you know, you work 40 hours, but we're open 7 days,
right.
so.
And it makes sense from all sides of it too, if there's a long stretch that the library's not closed. Like having for the community too, if it's all concentrated on part of the year and not in another part, right? You know, that seems more reasonable to kind of be able to go to the library during that time. Yeah, and to your point, Virginia, if everybody looked at things that we take for granted, like holidays, and the idea that there's the regular and then there's the non-regular. If we did that kind of review more often, we would get to the point that in 2023, we're looking at it kind of like it's from 1950, you know, it just is like to have a more frequent kind of look at it.
Can I ask a practical question is, how would that look for the staff who were actually trying to decide on these, for staff that might have to plan, like I'm just thinking of growing up, like tickets to India are not cheap now, and they really weren't cheap in the 80s. And so like my dad would like sit down with his partners and be like, where can I get this break a year or two in advance? And I'm just wondering, realistically, is that going to create a little bit of upheaval? And I also worry about like, if we are constantly may hit a point to re-examine on a certain basis, I worry about singling people out, where it's like, oh, we hired another Jewish person, guess we're gonna, and that for me as an attorney is always like, ooh, I really hate the idea of ever singling somebody out because of their diversity and their ethnicity, which is kind of the opposite of what we are trying to.
I don't think it's gonna come out that way. I think it's again gonna be more of a temp check, like,
Yeah,
you know, and a lot of this came down to, we had a very similar conversation where I work about, you know, people being like, no, like, kind of like what you said, no, I can finally go see so-and-so, like I'm taking 3 weeks off, and like, we're all hyperventilating because
Yeah.
like,
yeah,
this person's gonna be gone for 3
Right.
weeks. And more just being like, we can do that temp check and be like, maybe in 5 years, Easter is not something that our staff is concerned with. Or maybe in 5 years, like, I don't know, there's another major cultural shift and, you know, there's some other, you know, Juneteenth was not a thing like 2 years ago. So like, we don't know what kind of things people are gonna prioritize down the road. And I don't wanna try to predict that.
right.
I think I wanna take into account what the staff has asked of us. Particularly the fact that their holidays do not align with like the rest of Oakland. And get some of those things rectified. But like, the community is gonna change, our staff is gonna change, and like. I think we just have to, like, give ourselves a little grace and be like, whatever we come up with now might be like. Not a great answer in 2 years. We have to be.
That approve the calendar, sort of like D97 does, where they approve a calendar like a year in advance and then you come back to it. That,
Right.
okay,
Right.
that's fair.
And
So
that
I'd
is
like,
what we're talking.
yeah, that's what we're
we're
talking about, yeah.
Right, like, and that's why we're talking, that's why Matthew started with connecting it to the budget cycle.
right, because this would be for the 2024 calendar year.
Do you all do an annual survey of staff? And if you do, could you tie in questions with this? Because I do, like, to Suzanne's point, I think, I don't know that this was the best way to solicit information, like, I think when you do groups, it can be like, not everyone has a developed opinion maybe yet, like, people need to sit with this stuff, and I was sad to see someone say, like, we're not doing anything with your floating holidays, like, I don't want anyone to think that, so I guess once we have like a half-baked idea, like, I'd love to get more feedback and more, I don't know, survey type style, but if, I don't wanna like add another survey, so if there's one that maybe it's coming out, if we can tap
We do
into it.
different surveys, so, and we do like a temperature check quarterly about, how staff feel about work, how do they, do they feel connected? That kind of thing, it's very short. So they are used to getting surveys, but that's the other thing, I didn't wanna oversaturate them with another survey, and I really felt like it was good to hear the voices just
Yeah.
behind a general, maybe a general thing that we could have asked. These are very specific things, like verbatim what they said. And some, like Suzanne, some people did say, I'm down with just having a civic engagement. Some stuff they did agree with, but I think it does tell a story that multiple ideas were mentioned.
Yeah.
And I made a point, even if it repeated, just to write it again. So it can be, you can see kind of like a trend.
I think it just speaks to how hard this is, like, there's a lot of conflicting opinions even within it, so it's just, something we're gonna kind of have to wrestle, I think, each year.
Yeah, and also when we, I'm sorry. And also when we ask the question, like, it's not lost on me that Easter just happened. Do you know what I mean? So that we, and that doesn't mean that that's not valid. It's just like, right, like the next time that there's a holiday, when you realize that your colleagues around you are able to take off, then you're not, like, you
And the
know.
first thing was MLK, like when we approved it, because we didn't do it in November, that was top of mind, and it was January, it was too late to add it. So you're right, it was.
Again, that's not to like, that's, I'm not trying to, like, I think it's a valid opinion. I think that what comes to the top.
It just might be like.
It's just how brains work.
Or like it's, so again, so I think that maybe the combo that we're talking about, so that we have a survey, but I think all surveys need qualitative aspects to be able to flesh out, or to be able to hear even opinions that are not necessarily the majority opinions, but like something that's been articulated. I think that, okay. So this is a real, I mean, I really appreciate all the work that's been gone into collecting it and the conversations that they reflect. And I do understand that we're not getting a full sense of all the conversations that happen behind these comments. So I'm grateful for that. And maybe we keep working on it and thinking about better ways to.
So I have an action item, why don't we draft a survey, and then we can bring it for you all to look at. And then, if you have some ideas about questions, if we're missing something, then we can come together on that, and then we'll send it to staff, and then we go from there. Does that work?
Yeah.
And I think one of the questions that has come up, a couple of things that have come up in this process, one that I think is reflected in here is the idea that floating holidays are appreciated and needed, right? There was the one comment where somebody was saying it's tough when other people use their floating holidays and then they're not, short step, but we gotta respect people's need to have a holiday that's not considered the norm, it's just. But the other thing.
The comment on that one was about the Easter, so that was not out of the norm, it's just, we're not.
There was something about people using.
Oh,
Yeah, it's about being short staffed.
Because we're open.
Because you're open to adding to it.
This, other people that have requested.
There's more, like, somebody got the majority to get people asking for that, whereas others may not be a majority, because of that majority, all of that.
Can I ask one other
What
favor as we look at this?
Sure.
Is can we look at what would happen if we had a break every quarter?
Mhm.
And we already have a spring break and a winter break and possibly a fall break, and they can just throw someone in there.
Okay. Sure.
And then the other question I thought that was, or issue that came up is the idea of governing body and religion. And whether we, you know, and. You know. The idea of trying to have some separation there in terms of observed holidays. You know, that was some of the thinking is that if you're not going to. Kind of cover all religions to have multiple holidays for one religion. What does that say about us as a governing body? And so that's some of, you know, the thinking around kind of just closed days of these different, you know, different seasons. But there's the issue of people's family. Other governing bodies having those days off. But I don't want to lose that kind of thinking. And I don't want to lose the idea that there is kind of this majority, minority, you know, approach to holidays and particularly religious holidays. And that we're hearing voices. And how many voices are we hearing because how many are represented, you know, all of that. I want to listen to staff, absolutely, and give staff what they need when we're talking about holidays, but I don't want to lose that perspective on it. You know, if that makes sense.
I don't think we will, but I think what we're seeing here is there's like, I think of Christmas, like there's Jesus Christmas and there's Santa Christmas. And like, are we to a point where some of these holidays are just, they're so ingrained everywhere else that we're making life difficult for our staff to try to function by working here on a day where the rest of the world has decided not to.
And that's the tension and the balance.
And so do we just kind of like lean the Santa direction, lean the Easter Bunny direction and say like, you're closed because that's
Which Easter?
this Orthodox Lord and Child.
Or the
Well, the
Orthodox
Eastern
Easter,
Orthodox or the Western?
which is on a different date, except for once every about 10 years.
Probably not, probably not the Orthodox.
But I think some of this we have to realize that people go, if they leave the library and other things will be closed and other family members will be home and there will be like the childcare and things like that.
Right.
And we have to help our staff manage that, or at least not make it more difficult.
I think too, like, did we have agreed on some stuff? I think we said 12 days, like, wasn't that the total? Or was it 10 for next year? We added 2 or whatever.
We had to, yeah.
And then we still wanted to keep the floating holidays, so it would be nice to have like that information, I think, part of the survey, but I just want to hear like the response to kind of what we're probably proposing.
And certainly want
So-
to feel like we're not wanting to get rid of. The living holiday. I think that's a really important.
Do you have a sample of what you want to ask in mind?
Not at this moment, so that I could think about it.
And just realize also, I mean, you don't have all the answers, you're not gonna give them all in the survey either.
Totally.
100%.
I think it's one of those things, I'm a survey person, like if you asked me a question like this in the team meeting, I probably would just be like, oh, I don't know. But like, it's just getting the diversity of learning styles and talking styles and all of that.
Yeah.
Sure. Happy to do it. Then you have anecdotal, you have comments, you'll have a survey, we'll have all the tools, so we can let us up there. So we'll work on that and bring a draft.
And like realistically, we're probably still gonna be in the same situation where we're gonna have a lot of conflicting views and opinions, and we're still going to make a call, and that's what we have to do.
Make shit our conflicting opinions.
Can I ask for your opinion on something, Jocelyn, and that's, like, we're talking about a survey which we'll send out, but do you think, like, the timing of the survey is what I'm questioning, I guess I'm questioning, I think we really need to do a survey, I think we need to do it in a way that's in combination with making sure that we hear comments that are not like, encompassed in quantitative data, but I'm also wondering if the leadership team has just had this conversation, and then we go back and we say, okay, but now fill the survey, if that'll feel like we're not listening to the thing that has come in front of us,
It's right.
you know, and I don't know.
But
if we should take a beat
but you're asking
or-
about holidays. So it's not like you're asking about something terrible. People want to give their feedback, but it might be that way because. Like the leadership team and their supervisors are their representatives. And so it's their jobs to bring back their voices, but again, we're happy to do it. Like Virginia said, you'll have more information. And if it helps to arrive at where we want to be in November.
Oh, whoa, nobody said that.
I mean,
We'll get data attached to it too, like we'll know. Are some of these comments coming from folks who are part-time versus full-time?
so I'm hearing you want to know, you want the people identified. So.
I don't want the people identified.
But you're saying, I don't mean latter day, are they part-time, are they full-time?
Right, or, some kind of demographic, their tenure, or, things like that. I think that'll provide some perspective on it as well.
Well, what are the categories that you said that staff are used to getting surveys? What are the categories that you usually? I mean, beyond just like.
Sense of belonging. Are you happy at work? Like, it's like a 4-question.
Sure, but how do you break down
demographics
the data we get?
Until we break it down, Billy.
Break it down, though.
It's gonna come along.
I just waited to jump into.
I know.
No, but we,
Team of HR
yeah, we do, collect, do various surveys through Bamboo HR. We're able to segment it based on the, department, the, employment tenure, like how long they've been here, age in some cases, and what's the other one? Forget the other one. I think there's one more, but it's not every category.
I'm definitely interested in department because I know there was a call out on like facilities and security. That their access to holidays or their access to time off is different from, say, librarian staff. So it would be interesting to see if there are more like, I really need my floating holiday comments from that segment or,
Yeah.
Can I? Why don't we just transfer?
You go, before you get scared away. I was gonna ask if in those constituencies that we identify, is there one that's small enough that the kind of question we're asking would compromise anonymity?
So that's actually what happens. It's built into Bamboo HR. Depending on the group size and what this questions are that they're asking, it may not give you the data.
Okay, cool.
Sometimes it's like for the ENPS survey, it's like 7 or more. You have to have 7 or more, and some of these departments, public safety and facilities are less than that. So yeah, it protects the anonymity.
Okay, good.
The survey in which you're describing, I don't know if I could build this in Bamboo HR. So we could have to do it through Google Forms. We could ask a number of questions. But yeah, we have to think about how. Yeah, what we're tracking, and is it anonymous, and how confidential will it be, especially if there's 3 people in a department and.
Right.
And we don't want to make it too long.
I mean, I trust them to tell us, but
Yeah, that's it.
you might not want to know
But
as well.
yeah, it's interesting. Asking about holidays, you think it's, harmless enough, right? But I mean, there's a lot of emotions wrapped up in this, we found. So.
Yeah.
So these comments, it was just what comments do you have about holidays or?
They were asked and primed that they're going to. You need to ask your staff and bring it back to the meeting. So they had a few days, almost a week to kind of do that. And so between the management team and the leadership team, they did do that. And we had a discussion in our meeting with those 2 teams based on what their team said. And like I said, I jotted down everything they said verbatim and shared it here. And so as the leaders from the management up to the leadership team, they're the voice. And so they brought back the voices of what the people said, the people who did respond to the conversations they did have. So yeah, we can do a survey.
Was there a sense that the leadership team like came forward with thoughts about what would work best and what, like,
There's no one, no, there's no one overarching thing that came through, like you said, even at the bottom, they compliment some people, but one thing I do notice, there are things, like I said before, it seems like some things do repeat. I think some things that came out were follow federal and state. Please don't work us when other people are closed. I think that one was a common one. I also, it says, please don't rename, like, let's not take it upon ourselves to rename, but it's okay if you just say library is closed. Or we call it a break. People had some coalescing around those ideas, so that there seemed to be some, you know, some, I don't know, some agreement around those things that came up a few times over and over.
Well, the thing is, I like to respect library staff and librarians, and anybody who's like at all associated with working for a library, like, and their ability to, and interest in thinking things through. So it's just having kind of this like distilled little bits and not knowing the context. That's why I'm just asking if maybe, you know, the leadership team that had these, you know, the folks who had the conversations had any sort of like, well, my sense is that I think this would work for, you know.
Yes, and that is captured here in the comments. They
Yeah,
said,
this
I
is
like libraries
important.
closed. Please don't rename. Please follow state and federal. And there were a few that said, you know, we don't have to do President's Day, let's do an engagement thing. So those are the ones. Oh, and then Veterans Day also was one that was, we had some conversation around, we're open on Veterans Day. And people thought that was disrespectful. So that was a comment also that was not expected. And then Easter, there was, you know, some conversation around Easter that overlapped a few times that were unexpected. So I'd say those maybe 5 things were kind of the overlapping things, but we will do the survey. We'll give you a draft. We can add that to that. So we'll have this, we'll have a survey. And then, I mean, whatever else we will have, because we have some time before we have to decide. So,
Excellent.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on. Greatest studio policy,
Okay.
or, no, I think I should go ahead again.
Oh.
Review the public comment policy.
Well, that was actually from Monterito's request at the end to talk about that, so I just added it per your request.
Yeah. Don't make it over your.
You'll probably find it by clicking the link at the top of the agenda.
Okay, thanks.
At the top of the where it says public comment.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I had it put up already. So I guess I was just, you know, there were a couple of things that what was the context that we were talking, we were having this conversation, remember, about like what was happening in neighboring
Yes.
library boards? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, it was related to the Elmwood Park. There's a part where
The library board,
the order in which they are done. Library board president determines the order in which speakers will be recognized. That was a question because of when Elmwood Park has been having these issues. They first they canceled the meeting. And then they rescheduled it and didn't post the reschedule, and then people found out, and then people showed up for public comments. And they basically lined up the people that they wanted. and then told the rest that there was no room for other public comments.
That sounds like a violation of open meetings to me, but I don't know the law that well, so it's.
So anyway.
That kind of behavior is rampant in public bodies across Illinois of like not following open meetings, not following proper procedures when it comes to public comment. So like, I'm just hesitant of like changing our policy because someone else decided to ignore state law.
I'm just
So-
saying,
I'm sorry.
so like, when you go to Village Hall to do public comment at a village board meeting, there's a sign-in sheet and you sign in. And then that's the order in which people are recognized. So if it's really important for you to get, to do a public comment at Village Hall, because I spent many times there doing it when we had some issues there. You get there really early, or you make sure that somebody else can sign you in and get your name in there. And then that's the order that things go in. So then there's no, the power dynamic and the transparency is there. And I'm just thinking, I'm not worried about you doing this, Matt, but if we're setting this as a policy, you know, if something like Elmwood Park or Niles happened here, how is that policy possibly going to be used? That's all.
But again, though, in those other instances, in those other libraries, they were breaking the law. This was like not an issue of them not following their own policy. They were like setting the policy on that isn't gonna stop someone from breaking the law. You know, it's like they've got bigger issues than whether or not they had a policy. In the past, we have had a sign-in sheet for people to make public comment. We can have that again.
We still have it, I think.
It's,
We do. It's over there. It's-
yeah.
The number of people, like the number of meetings that we've had more than like one person making a public comment, I can count on it. You know, I'm all for it. I don't have any problem with it. It's like, this feels a bit like a solution in search of problem. Of something that like we have a process, but is it a thing that you can get level C for, or is this a process? Not everything that we do as a practice needs to be in a policy. And so it's like, is this a process and a practice that we have that we follow? Or, you know, having a policy where we have a written sign-in, where we talk about following a written sign-in sheet. What happens if we go back to fully virtual meetings? How do we determine that order versus, when people are in a virtual meeting? Or how do the people who are attending virtually don't have a chance to sign that paper? And how do we gauge what order those people go in? I'm open to that discussion and doing that, but is that something that we need to have written in policy that then ties us to that and doesn't allow us flexibility as a procedure and practice would be as technology changes, is how we have to meet changes.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. It's like, there's clear statute and opinion from the Attorney General that says, and court and the courts that say people have a right to address public bodies during public comment time. If we don't let them, it's like, I feel bad that other bodies feel like controlling the order in which people speaks is how they choose to exercise their power. And whether or not that impacts the deliberations of a meeting. But if people want to come and speak, they are entitled to do that. But I also don't want to, so, go ahead.
And I was gonna say, I think, both before COVID, we did have, like, I remember the sign-up sheet, and people would come and sign in. And I remember being slightly worried about that when we went virtual. I was like, what are we gonna do? Like, have them all comment their name? But it ended up not being an issue because a lot of people submitted what they needed to have read or needed to have included. Like virtually, like sent an email or something, and we used timestamps for when we looked at it. But then now again, in a hybrid situation, we do have people who attend in person and who are virtual. And if we have to be malleable, I don't know what else is coming that would change how people would interact with us. And I'm wary of putting something so staunchly in place that we don't make room for somebody coming in a direction that we haven't thought of before. And we've had a couple meetings where we did have a lot of public comment. And it was not terribly positive in this board's direction. And we did a good, I'll say we did a good job of making sure that everyone had their time, was able to do their public comment, was able to address the board. I understand what you're saying. We won't always be for it. That won't always be the precedent.
But that will change the policy. That board can change, that board can change the policy
Right, yeah.
to suit their whims, you know, but I think.
Well, why don't we just not follow the policy, which is what
If people
what's
are willing to
done.
not follow the law,
They
they're
weren't-
definitely gonna be willing to
Yeah.
not follow.
So if I can just say, I would like to maybe rephrase the question a little bit and see if, I'm not sure I get I understand what's at stake in keeping the phrase or sentence, library board president determines the order in which speakers will be recognized versus whatever else, the kind of conversations that Matt just said he's open to, like combination of virtual and digital or whatever, sign-in sheet or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, what is gained or lost if we were to take that sentence and say that we're going to follow a sign-in sheet process? We can determine what that process is. That is malleable, that can change. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like I'm hearing resistance, but I'm not exactly understanding what the resistance to changing that one sentence is. To me, I was interested in your using, Virginia, the phrase that it's like not make it that staunch, because to me, the library board determines the order in which the speakers will be recognized. To me, that sounds more assertive than like a pause, like a, you know, we're just gonna follow a sign-in sheet.
I think what they're saying though is that like the way it's written currently could lend itself to a sign-in sheet, right? Like it just kind of leaves it as like, it's up to Matt, like. I don't know, right? Like.
Or whoever.
It's really-
Right, it just doesn't have really.
We get, but I guess what I'm saying is like the order in which we go, like the determining like that is the flexible part of this policy. And so if we were to put, like, we follow a strict sign-in sheet, that would be staunch because that would then actually narrow the understanding of the policy. But like as it's currently written, it actually kind of keeps it broad where like the board president is just. And we could
still understand how is one person deciding less or more flexible than like nobody decided.
I don't, well, it's not nobody
decided.
decided.
It's no person, no section being decided.
No, it's the decision already being made. It will be done via a sign-in sheet. We have no other option. We have, you know, should, I don't know, paper.
Well, I think
Prices
we
go
have-
the direction of
okay,
natural gas.
hypothetical situation, we start the meeting, whoever the board president collects a sign-in sheet,
Right,
someone comes in before we get to public comment.
Do they not get?
Who wants to make a public comment, but the board president is holding the sheet. The board president then can deny that person the ability to sign that sheet,
well, they
at
can
which
try
we do that to, and say that no, and then, but it's the sign-in sheet we use.
but you could, I'm just saying that if we're spinning hypotheticals, you could do that by this sentence. Library board determined
Yeah.
that you can just stop anybody from speaking.
Yes.
Mhm.
And not defer to the
Yes.
piece of paper.
But we make it easier by saying there's only one thing that he has to block. Sorry, not picking on you. There's only one thing that he has to block, which is access to this one specific physical piece of paper sign-in sheet. Versus he's going to determine how people are recognized, and he has to look all of us in the eye while he says it's somebody.
And I'm just recognizing an order. I'm not recognizing that someone can or cannot. It's, or you have the board president saying, this is the order.
That's a good.
Virtual versus in-person, in-person versus virtual, you know, which goes first? Does the person read the email submissions first or last? It's the discretion for the board president is not who gets to speak. Because I think actually, it's in what order, like, is it virtual versus in person versus?
Well, it's also who gets to speak, because it says you can limit repetitive comments, so it's not, you don't not have.
Which is also standard
Sure.
practice, because.
But I mean, this also would limit, like, most of the functionality that we would put in would limit somebody who's not able to make it to the meeting, but wants to submit a comment and write. If they can't access any sort of sign-in sheet or registry or whatever we put in place, if they can't access that, do we then ignore their public comment, or does their public comment?
Right.
So we have to go through like every scenario of anything that could possibly happen to make sure that we include absolutely everything versus just saying,
The principle of a policy,
It
and
goes
for
in
me,
order.
from my perspective, and and I know there's gonna be a variety of opinions on this. That policy is to give us a framework in which to operate, in which we can then root procedures and practices upon. And I don't see a policy as should be something that unless a very narrow set of circumstances should be limiting what we can and cannot do to very specific actions.
No, I
I think
100% agree,
it
it was
should be-
just, I think I don't want to speak for Suzanne, but my initial reading was that this was more limited, the policy. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Like, I had thought like ascribing one person who gets to make the decision to be more limiting. But I'm hearing, I'm hearing how like, and I will like think about that some more. But I agree that the idea is to get as many people who want to.
And we can adopt a procedure. We can like write up a procedure of how public comments are handled. That gives us, that the thing that we can then post, a simple thing, we will give, the default order of which public comments are made. Will be in-person, virtual, written. It will then be, it will be to the, deferral of, the deference of the chair that, repetitive public comments will be, limited, and can be, shown to say, can be found another way to be recognized. So that, so that the order of a meeting, so that cannot be derailed by 20 people just coming up to read the same statements in a row. It's like, okay, so who's here to say that they're against us building a building at Bridgeland in Chicago? Okay, 20 people, thank you. You understand that you're not in favor. Okay, now next, because that is a way for people to, derail a meeting is to flood that. It has been done with public comments and rulemaking, for all sorts of things and for whatever your purposes is, But it's like, we can come up with a procedure that we can post, at our meeting and our signage, quick little descriptor, please keep your minute, your comments to 3 minutes, here's the order of which we will, be received. You will have the option to, if you come in before public comment is concluded, to be asked, at the end of all written comments, we will be asked if there are any late arrivals who would like to make another in-person.
I was gonna say, like, even like coming up with an order like that makes me itchy, because I'm like, okay, what if there's another technological snafu? Then do we not do the written comments because we couldn't do the digital comment, like.
Well, I mean, I don't think I know for sure that I didn't want anybody to spend any more time talking about the procedure for what we do. I know that for. But so I think that I don't feel the need to belabor this point. I really did want to hear like what I was missing in my interpretation of that sentence. I've heard it. The thing that I think is more important is what happens after people give public comments. comments. Like I have been getting the sense that there are a few community members who feel unheard. And I've been getting the sense because they have said that very specifically a number of times, who feel unheard from their public comments. And I think that because we're in publicly elected body, I don't think we should like, I don't know, I just wanted to have the conversation about what is a responsible way to potentially address people's concerns. Like I don't, nobody else feels that way. Like I was just thinking that it'd be, I don't know, like when you open it up to trustee comments, if it was just like trustee comments, including responses to like the public comments or something, do you know what I mean? Like just something else that like signals that we heard people who come
I mean,
here.
as trustees, correct me if I'm wrong, we are allowed to comment if we so choose.
Sure,
yes.
and I'm talking about something that signals a more positive engagement than like a default that we can if we want to. I'm saying, and like an affirmative step, I guess.
I think sometimes the quandary that we have is one side of the perspective is represented by public comment and the other side is not.
Sure, I have that same quandary.
And we've talked about like if it's not part of the agenda and other people in the community don't know to show up and participate in that conversation, then it's difficult for us to engage with like only one half of the conversation.
Well, I mean, I would argue that it's still easy for us to engage. It may not be responsible for us to engage, but what I'm saying is that regardless, I think like an acknowledgement that somebody has, and I'm not saying we're compelled to acknowledge or that we're compelled to comment, but some, again, affirmative, just like some inclusion that we've heard this, we're thinking about it. You have an opinion about print newspapers and carrying those, you know, I think maybe, yeah, maybe we should think about it like 2 months from now and see, you know, do you know what I mean? Like, I think that we don't have to come on one side or we don't have to make any decisions there. But I think again, I consider our jobs as publicly elected officials to be explicit in our answerability to people and, you know, we're making those comments. So I think that would be my goal. Again, I'm not saying that we make a decision right there and then, though, if I'm not scared of arguments or debates either, obviously, but I do think that I don't know, I would like to think with everybody here, pros and cons of doing something about it.
Virginia had asked, in a note here that, Maya would be brought up to speed in what our responses have been to public comment.
Yeah.
And, I feel that I'm not really up to speed, you know, sometimes that I don't really know. And, I happen to know Rory personally, and I could not tell him what our response has been, because I don't really know. Was it somehow shared with us, what responses have been?
He submitted a FOIA and a response was given to him to that point. We can share that with.
And we reviewed it last month also. And in terms of the newspapers, I think last month also, there was a response that we would have, I said that we would have an action or share what we were going to decide in June. So the current policy does say, one of the ways you can answer is the action and make the connection to, it says something like that further down the line. So, I mean, in the case of those two, it has been answered. You know, the concerns have been answered, email, at board meetings, in reports.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not saying we make a decision, but I think that directly speaking to the person who's come to register a comment with us, to me, seems.
It is I would say that it is a public comment, not a public dialogue section. If you would like to address, I think that the trustee comment area, if you would like to raise an issue that was brought up and say, the board the board president should issue a response to that question, or you would like to have a discussion that staff present information to the board in response to that, or we can ask staff to address that issue with that person. Give follow-up information as entirely appropriate. It has happened before. It is,
That's why we're having this conversation right here.
but even before this one, it's like, that's happened. But public comment is for us to receive that period in the agenda is for us to receive it. And to thank that person for bringing their report. If you would like to make a personal, response during trustee comment, you are more than welcome to do so. That is that time in the agenda for you to do that. But during public comment, engaging in conversation with that person during a dialogue has happened in the past, and it has been, in my opinion, been entirely unproductive. Because at that time, that person is presenting a side in an argument that to a situation where we do not have all of the information.
No,
I think, and I will specifically agree with you, where there is an employment matter and a number of people in the public came to the board and commented and chastised the board related to an employment action that the executive director took and demanded, was demanding about an action, a personnel matter, where the board had information about that personnel matter, but could not speak to it. It would have been legally and fiscally, financially irresponsible for us to do so, to respond to any of those things with the information we had. And it was very frustrating for me personally to sit there and know more of the situation and being chastised by the public here and threatened by members of the public in retaliation for an action that happened, knowing that there was more information that I don't know if they knew or not, but that we could not share because it was not responsible for us to do so in that public comment or even trustee comment.
and I don't believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe at any point I have said that we need to respond or resolve the issue. I think the word I've used is acknowledge, which is, as far as I'm concerned, a different kind of word. So that I was there in that, or I don't know if it's happened a number of times, but I was definitely there.
Yeah.
In that example
But I
that you're
think
describing.
but what is the acknowledgement that? I mean, we thank them. We thank them when they after they speak. I don't know what more. Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I thanked Rory today. I thanked him every time he has spoken.
Thank you for the letters that you write.
I guess
I just don't know what more acknowledgement there could be.
well, then that's the conversation that I'm asking for, is can we think about, is there really no other kind of acknowledgement that would be beyond that would be a response? That would count as like an actual response or divulging information that we don't have or something, and if there's not. But I'm not, as you know, scared of actually bringing the idea up. I would like to know if, for instance, in the obviously purely hypothetical situation you were talking about, if we said something like, well, the board can't speak on personnel issues, or board can't make a public comment on personnel issues, right? Like, I'm not.
But those people knew that we couldn't.
It doesn't, that's.
They knew.
That's I'm talking about the way that we behave, practical, like that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our process. You can't, I don't know. You can't, why do I have to keep telling my kid this? You can't control what they do, you can only control what you do. Like, this is what I'm talking about, the way that we conduct ourselves and the way that we conduct our business. And if it's not effective, it's not effective. And if everybody, and again, I'm again asking for a conversation. I'm not angry that we're not doing this, but I'm saying, I think that it may behoove us to think about ways to more positively acknowledge people, whether or not we agree with them or whatever our personal relationships with them might be,
who've taken time from their day to come address an issue with us, or have taken time in their day to write an email to us, or whatever it is, you know, like, I think that, I don't know, I just think it's deplorable. That's my argument. There's no, so we
What
don't
does
think that there's.
look like beyond thanking them for coming and commenting?
Well, it would depend on the concern, but in the, again, I gave a very specific example of the one that you were talking about, like. Would it have been, I'm asking, it's a genuine question, is it inappropriate for us to say, the board cannot speak to personnel issues, like, in a public forum? Is that inappropriate to say?
No. That would have been a completely valid thing to say, but I don't. But given that the tone has been set, that we don't respond to individual public comments. At what point would I have said that?
No, I'm not.
But it's like,
I'm not scolding you for something.
I'm not trying to be defensive, I'm trying to be a legitimate question of. At what point then does that get said to that particular kind of question? If the intent of public comment is not to provide an immediate response to that. And do I say that then during, does the board, do I say, was that to be said during trustee comment? Or after each individual person? who
That's
said
that's my
But if-
question to
but if-
all of us.
but if-
If we think.
But if the premise is that I'm not, that the board isn't going to respond or reply or engage in dialogue with that comment, then what is the value of saying we're not going to discuss?
It's acknowledged.
But it's not, but the acknowledgement is. If the premise is that we're not gonna have a discussion based off that, with that person making that public comment, then why say we can't discuss public personal matters?
No, I don't understand, but obviously the situation would be different. In that case, there is no discussion to be had. In the conversation that Jocelyn is saying about the print newspapers, that's something we are coming to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would depend on the comment.
But does that mean then we give in equal responses to different public
I'm
comments?
asking that is the question that I'm asking. I'm saying that is there no, we really, the answer really is. We do zero or we do all of it. There's no like, we come to trustee comments and we say, okay, well, you know, I thought X's point was interesting. I'd like to follow up on that, you know, or. Isn't our job to separate the wheat from the chaff, like?
Done that before.
It is completely open to trustee comments. It's completely
I
open. to
feel
trustee
you're right.
comments.
I feel like I have done that. But I feel like I have made a conscious decision to do that before, but I've been on this board for 2 years. And I have started trying to make that, I believe that I was responding to like a situation that I have not seen happen before. And that's not, it's nobody's fault. It's the culture, like you're saying, there's like a tone that we've set. And I'm asking for us to think about that tone and what it accomplishes versus other things that we might accomplish without giving the whole, you know, worth of it.
I will admit, the introvert in me does not like you can see, I can sit here, but does not respond that quickly. And so public comments and me coming up with anything like reasonable to say, I think as far as we could get, because in a lot of situations, we're not gonna have the data, we're not gonna have the information, we're not gonna know if another response was, we're not gonna know if another response was already sent. We're not gonna know those things when they're here. I feel like the only thing we can responsibly do is genuinely thank them for their time, for their contribution, and then decide if we're going to follow up. Like you said, if it's something we want to talk about, there have definitely been times where we've said, you know, can we put that back on the agenda, or hey, can you resend that email back around because I probably missed it. You know, we can do those kinds of, but I don't think we can. I don't want to say that we will make certain responses to some public comments and then not to others, because then I feel like we
But
get.
who's asking? I am literally saying,
The people who are making public comments will use that as fodder.
If we have an unequal response.
we just 10 minutes ago We just said that you could count on your one hand the number of times you've had more than one person come speak for public comments. Like, I feel like, so clearly this is not like a huge issue. But, okay. I would
Pose a different perspective, how can we help the public feel listened to when they come and address us?
That I think we can, and I think we've talked about this before, that I think we can do a better job of by acknowledging. We hear your public comment, we're probably not gonna talk about it today. We might not even be able to get it onto the agenda next month. But I believe, and Jocelyn, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe we put that in the request for public comment online. Is we have a blurb that says, you know, we probably won't comment on it.
It's in the policy.
So it might be something that we have to bring up verbally, or Matt, you know, we've told Matt, hey, can you read this before public comment so that it's on record that, okay, we probably will not be talking about this. It's not already on the agenda. It's not getting put on there today. Might not make it to next month's. You know, if we do that, I think we started that piece by putting it in, and maybe we just need to be a little bit more forward facing with the messaging that we already have.
It was
Rather
put in
than-
there meant to be read,
Okay.
so
it's been put in there to be read in the meetings.
Yes,
it's long, but I think you just hit
I
it.
think
like,
it's still
really.
really, it's, you know, hearing. For people to hear that, I think it helps, and, you know, Johnson, I really appreciate how much effort you put into listening in the community and how much. You know, you have had people come in to continue conversations. I just think we as a board also need to. Operate from that place. More and have the community feel a little more listened to by us, and if that means. Reading out a statement every time, you know, so people start getting familiar with what's expected and how we operate. You know, I think that's helpful. I think the tone and particularly in the current climate of what's happening with boards and libraries. I think it, you know, and
I really feel like though, it might be just that simple. It might be that, I mean, I don't know how many forms I fill out a day, and I maybe don't read everything before I get to the section to fill things out. So it might just be good for people who are going back and watching our meetings online to hear that. I think then people will at least understand and not feel like things are being skipped. Sorry, Matt, we've all told you for reading it. Okay.
You know, you could seek your revenge by volunteering anyone else, making
the job.
But I just, thank you, because this is what I was thinking about, was just like somewhere, and maybe the statement comes after the comments instead of before, like as a way of saying that we hear you, we can't maybe respond, it's too late to be on the agenda.
I would recommend before.
I was gonna say, I think
Yeah.
if we're putting it on the thing for people to sign up for public comment, it would make sense.
They
I'm
should-
guessing
they should
it's
have
also
an
on the signature sheet.
expectation Before they,
And maybe,
they should have an understanding and expectation of our reaction before they. speak.
yeah, I think
And if you
the.
said, never saw it before, then you'd be like, oh, that's why they're not saying that, they read it.
yeah, right. Because like, and you know, when. Whatever, one person sends us the email every board meeting, right, like, they can just send us an email, there's no way for them to know, right, that there's like no actual expectation or whatever, and we're not like ignoring them, we're talking about it, we're thinking about it, we're using, you know, and I think that.
That's what it is.
That's what. Thank you.
We have a lot of policies.
Okay,
I'm proud.
Approve policies. to-
yes, all right, very quickly, legislation for childcare stipend. There's been no legislative updates with that. I've been working with someone to figure out how to adapt the township language of pay for for their, boards into the library code. There's different phrasing in the two areas, but basically the premise is that it empowers a board to set that dollar amount. It doesn't require, a board could say our dollar amount is zero. But it gives them the power to, it doesn't require a dollar amount, because not every board is going to be in a position to do that. I mean, there are libraries that still maintain late fees, not because they believe in the punitive nature of them or whatever. It's that for budgetary reasons, they need it for operational reasons. There are just some libraries that have that requirement. So the idea it would be to follow the township model, so that there's a path for boards to use it or not use it as they see fit. And they have to do it every year. So it is at an open meeting, it is transparent. And so therefore it is part of, no one can say a library board is trying to sneak in a pay raise, through some kind of thing. They have to it's a separate vote from the budget. In the townships, they have to set the rate at a public meeting. So a library would have to do the same thing. So that is the model that I'm trying to follow. And the fact that townships already do it helps. Because in a lot of these communities, they fold over the same boundary lines, serve similar sized populations. So therefore, there's a lot of parallels that we can use in putting that forward. Right?
I would just add, we never told the full board that we met with Rep. Ford.
I thought we did.
We never did.
Christina and I had a very productive conversation with Sean Ford. He was very upfront with, it was over Zoom. He was very upfront with the idea that it was probably not going to happen this legislative session, but he would, if we got him the language, he would introduce it as, file it as an amendment to something to at least get it on the board, get it, so that it will get people's attention and perhaps raise, the issue to have the conversation started for the next legislative session. But he was very open to working with us on that. And he was very receptive to the ideas of how it provides equity and opens the door for more people with caregiving needs to run for office.
So what's the timeline and next steps then?
We have, they're racing to a May 15th session deadline for all the budget stuff. So if we can get him some language before then, he'll file it as an amendment to something that then he can start having conversations. That it probably won't, the likelihood of it being adopted this year, this session, is practically zero, but then it's an easy thing to then move forward and carry it over into a piece of legislation that when they start crafting stuff after the fall veto session in December into the legislative session they start in January.
Okay, and then what has to happen for that?
Once that
To get there, to get my language term for next meeting.
I just you have to kind of type it up into figuring out how it where exactly into the library code it would fit. And there's a section that addresses that library trustees serve without compensation. And this would basically go into that and just changing a few references from township officers to library officers. Because as board members, we are considered officers for the purposes of this language, not just, the board president, the board secretary, is not just those officers, the whole board is considered officers of the library.
So basically you're going to.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then is there anything you need from us before that date?
No,
Let me know how I can support. I'm still in it. I just have had a busy few weeks.
no, you're fine, you're fine, it's just. I think because we were also looking at some of the language that the school districts were doing, but they're a little bit more complicated because of the way that their districts just are all over the place, but the townships are a little bit more aligned even downstate with some of the library districts. It lends itself a little bit better, especially including also like service levels where townships and libraries are kind of treated as a little bit more year-round social service. You know, and downstate also highways, but you know, that's not really pertinent to this, but more social service, you know, pool of government. So that's why I was going with that, and township officers do get a small little bit of money, so.
Excellent.
Thank you so much. Moving on to new business, nominating committee. Now that we have a new board, there'll be a nominating committee that will meet sometime before May. And will bring forward a recommendation of officers, which will include board president, board secretary, and finance officer. And Virginia has agreed to chair that. Thank you so much. I'm joking. That will be Christina, Margarita, and Suzanne have all agreed to serve on that. And Margarita, would you be willing to share?
Sure.
It's generally,
Absolutely.
I will let you set a meeting, but it will be a public meeting. You can meet virtually.
I love public comments. I don't know if you are.
You do. You have,
And Matt, it's president, and vice president.
oh, yes, thank you, Ted. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, there is a board vice president, treasurer. Well, I think we renamed it to finance officer. That is our treasurer. So yes, there's 4 positions. Just wondering if you can let Jocelyn know when you plan to meet so it can be posted. And a virtual meeting would be that you would be eligible to meet virtually.
Okay.
On this.
Thank you.
Next, creative studio policy.
Okay, so this one is pretty key because the ribbon cutting is Thursday and we would need you to approve the policy, please. So just to give you a brief overview, it is very broad. If we need to narrow it, just like the conversation we just had just a few minutes ago, we will do that. But it just kind of gives a broad overview of what to expect, who can use it, the expectations for groundbreaking things or and that sort of thing. So I don't know, I hope you've had a chance to review it. Are there any questions about it?
I only have one quick question.
Sure.
So there are restrictions. And again, I see the restrictions are pretty broad. We're leaving that to the discretion of our staff to determine what is.
Right, and then we haven't had it in a while like that, so if something doesn't work, we can always come back, but it is very, very broad.
I mean, I saw, you know, weapons and keys.
Yes.
I'm very happy to see that. But then I saw, you know, it seemed. Discretion, let's say. And I'm guessing we also have. Technology or understanding beyond me to do things that are subject to copyright or patent and all that kind of goes along with the equipment that we
Yes.
already, okay.
Yes.
This is an obnoxious pet peeve. Under user responsibilities, all users are responsible for, and then you have gerund, and then you have adjective, and then you have gerund. I'm really sorry, could it be being respectful, accountable, and safely using?
Sure, that's fine. This is the time to give you the edit. So what is the recommendation?
Second bullet point is a respectful adjective, which is, it's not the gerund verb, which is the other 2 bullet
What
points.
are you?
Be respectful, comma, accountable, comma, and safely. Or in safe use of equipment would be safely using the equipment.
Safely use.
Safe equipment, yeah.
Actually,
Well, okay, go ahead. I might be wrong on that.
I think it should be using the equipment in space respectfully and comfortably and safely.
That would actually be a better way of doing it.
Using equipment respectfully, responsibly, and safely.
Yeah.
I told you guys.
I love that you pay attention, right? I was like, I feel like the biggest jerk, but that was drives me crazy. I'm like, always rewrite after them.
Literally this is the time to do that, so, we'll add an edit. So with that edit, are there any other suggestions? Concerns?
Could I ask preemptively that we put this on our list of policies to review in 6 months? After we've seen how the creative studio is actively being used.
Do you want to do it in 6 months, or we have a rotation now, so you gotta get your policies, just like, we're gonna do
I
it
just
again?
want, I just want to do it sooner than we would do a normal policy. I think you have everything going on like a 12-month rotation. I want to do this before that. Like after we've had enough time to see data and usage.
What is this, April? October.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Got it.
Is. Would it make sense to have something in here about hate speech or not?
I think that goes under unsafe, harmful, and dangerous. That was kind of where I
But
was.
also covered under responsibilities of using it respectfully, accountably, and safely. I
And
think
also in conjunction with the library for everyone.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ready for the,
Is there a motion to approve with the edits that were identified?
So,
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? It is passed.
yay.
Next is a library for everyone.
Yes, that hasn't changed. The only thing, it's related to the creative studio, you can't eat food in there. So we said something, so that's just clarifying that, because it didn't exist before, that was the only addition. I'm not trying to write library for everyone over again at all, but if we change anything, following protocol, we need to bring it to you, so that was the only change.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
second.
Seconded by Ted.
We're already good.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. It is approved.
Yay.
What if I have a 6-point?
No, that's.
We don't do the teacher pause here.
There were some things.
The top-
There were some good things.
Yeah.
Had to get it. You have a meeting.
Looks like there was only one addition to this one as well.
The photography video, yes. We just added the limited public forum. That terminology has come up with people coming to try to record you and, trap you into saying you're not giving them their rights. We are considered a limited public forum being a library, so we just added that language into our video and photography policy that already exists.
What does that mean?
Why you want to define that, lawyer?
I would actually prefer not to.
Okay.
I'm gonna be perfectly honest.
That means we're within our rights to, because the services we provide and are our own little fiefdom, so to speak, we have the right to impose and say, okay, if you're causing a disturbance, if it's causing something to be unsafe, we have a right to say, okay, you doing that supersedes you say, oh, I have a right to, I can free speech anything I want, I can say what I want, because we are considered a limited public.
Okay, that's very good.
It's as easy as I can explain it, because I have to look myself just to make sure.
Well, Jody's nodding her head in approval.
Oh, good. So that was the only change for that one.
Any other questions? Okay, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Virginia, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Maya, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. It is approved. Borrowing of library items.
Okay, I actually did have a question.
Yes.
Do we still block and suspend library cards with fines over $50?
Not a fine. It's if you owe in charges, but you do still get charged if you lose the book, or if you tear it up.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So, yeah, if you've just gone off and run away with our books, we will, there's.
You're still charged for it.
Except here.
Then we do,
Years
3
ago,
times, so.
Got a dog training book and the dog chewed up the book.
There needs to be like a picture
Like, yeah.
for the library needs a picture of that, because that's just fantastic.
That is a good.
That is fantastic.
I was asking our chip mic for us being like, hey now, my training book is just
Maybe have
fine.
like a child, you know, the ones that you can't break or tear, that
Yeah.
you drive over, they should do that for us.
But it's unrelated, and I love the fact that on the receipts, when you check out books, it tells you how much you're taking out in terms of money.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
So that, I think sometimes it's like $300 of books that I'm taking out, and it gives that amount, so you have an exact price for every item that we have.
Or the value at least of what you're checking out, yes.
So you know that you're getting your value from the library. All right, are there any other questions regarding this policy? All right, is there a motion to approve? Moved by Suzanne, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Christina, any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay, it is approved.
Is interlibrary on the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, so there have been some changes, like we don't, again, like you just said, Virginia, we don't charge patrons, for certain things. So we just updated to fit what we do now in a lot of cases. And we added some links. We spelled out what some of the acronyms mean, so people know, who we're talking about. So again, not really deep changes, but in the spirit of, reviewing our policies, that was one on the back end.
Some of this is important, I mean, it's little minutia stuff, but it can matter.
I like that policies can have links now, like, if you look at, you know, the last time this was looked at was 2011.
Yeah.
You'd have to like go somewhere else to read, like, and now it's just like, right, that's a big.
If you don't know what the interlibrary loan code is, it's right there.
Yeah,
So those are some of the things that were
I really appreciate that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, and we took out lending fees, we don't do lending fees anymore, that was another change, so.
Is there a motion to approve?
Yes.
Is there a second? Is there a second?
Second.
Is any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay, it is approved.
And the last one, before we get to a resolution, is the reciprocal borrowing policy. It really is just a paragraph, and then we, linked the acronym to the Rails reciprocal borrowing page.
Okay.
How's that?
Is there a motion to approve?
Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? It is approved.
Thank you. And then we have a. We have a resolution, we do have a capital endowment fund that sits with the, community foundation of Oakland. It has $25,000 in it, they haven't used it in a really long time, it's hard to find a capital project for $25,000 and 100,000. Plus square foot building, plus 2 other, locations. So we, again, I went to the book 101 training, and I really learned a lot about what community engagement does. And some of their things of their wish list, one of the things I asked, what do you wish that you could have? So the answer was, an electric bike. And so, we have, if you're not familiar, we have a little bike that has, you open up, it has shelves. We can custom it wherever we want. Like I said earlier, it's something we can use to help promote small businesses. We engage at the parks in the summertime, et cetera, et cetera. Electric bike would, it's hard, but it's heavy. It's hard to drive. It's a big tricycle, so to speak. So having an electric bike would enable more people to participate. And we have a high demand for the use. And also, it's like a personal, it still is a capital project, sort of, kind of. And we did our homework, we did ask them, they said it's okay with them with the community fund. And that's like a perfect little nugget of money that we can spend that's there to do something to expand services to the community. So we put up to 7,000 just to cover ourselves. You know, in case the price changes between today and tomorrow. You have it's in there,
The breakdown.
the breakdown of how much it is to customize it all out. And so what the community foundation asked us is to bring it to the board, to have you all vote on it, and then if you say yes, then we have it signed off, and then it's captured in the board minutes too, that you all said yes or no. And then we can move forward to get the.
So we would still have the manual bike.
Yes,
So now, what am I gonna say now? Because I always said that we had 4.5 branches. We had 3 physical, 1 virtual, and a half branch, which was the bike. What do I say?
you say.
2.5?
Like 0.1.
So I think we need to change the percentages on the bikes.
Yeah.
So it's only one.
You're really?
Yeah. That's about where we're gonna get to that.
So we'll get
One
one
of
farm, that's not just.
Great.
Yeah, we're not. It just enables us to have other people, like, I'm not that way.
Yeah.
Fashion, but you know, other people have already said, I would definitely do that. And then community engagement is really good in involving other staff, in inviting them to also, you know, do community engagement too, because I feel like it's part of all of our jobs to do that.
Okay, I have a super important question. Like, how fast can we get that?
I don't know how fast electric bikes go, at least.
No, I think.
How quickly?
Were we like operated to before these electrics?
I don't think so, because you know, we still have the product chain. And so we'll have to work with it, and you know, how long is that gonna take, is there a delay or anything, but we wanna, and then we also, once they get to, they also have to plan, okay, how are we gonna use to? So, good question, you're looking at probably 2024, whether they actually activate, just in terms of trying to plan and train people how to ride it. We don't want somebody to get the $7,000 bike and crash it into the wall immediately, so all those things will have to happen. So you look at 2024 before you see what problem.
Okay, I have one other question.
Yes.
Since you said to do this, we sort of massage the definition of capital project. Does that mean we can do projects in other community spaces and use these funds?
Maybe. And that's why we asked, we didn't know, so we're like, well, go ahead, and we asked, and they said yes. And then they gave us the next steps of what to do, so that's why it's on the agenda.
Capital tends to be like one-off expenditures as opposed to annual recurring pieces.
Right, I'm just making sure like it doesn't have to be in our space, like the book bike is kind of in that gray area where like it does wholly belong to us, but it's like out in the community.
Like, we wanna do something at the train station and do something.
Exactly, if we wanted to put up, before community engagement talked about, getting books into laundry mats or going up, could we start using these funds to facilitate something?
Well, maybe not buying books, but like if we did a capital project, like that's why the bike works, because it's an actual tangible thing, and also have shelves. So you can flex it that way, but like if we.
That's what I'm thinking, like, we already have the books
Yeah.
for these kinds of projects, but like having the structure to put it there. Right.
Yeah.
Or the
There you
person
go.
to install it or
Yes.
something, could we use these funds for those kinds of funding?
Possibly, yes, as far as I ask, so far they have a.
Better to ask forgiveness than permission.
I don't think so. I don't know what's called that, like supplies or something like that. Yeah, but if we had a structure that we built to, I don't know, plug it in better. Then it's a capital project, so then that would have to like call a vendor and then they would install something. I'm just making up something, like whatever, there's a magical thing where it could be, I don't know, like it gets charged wirelessly or something. That would be a capital project, and it's not a ton of money, so that's why I'm excited about this.
Yeah.
Because, you know, what, I tease Matt all the time, like he go, and then he can spend 25,000 in like 1 second, just because it's, you know, it's expensive. It's hard, so this works, it doesn't take all the money out, we still have a little change left. And this one, we don't have to do like the 4.5%, that's the other challenge, usually the funds, so they keep going. There's a limit to how much we can take out, this one doesn't have that. So, I don't know, I don't see the downside.
I think it's really
Like,
exciting.
impact for really small things.
Like, do any other libraries have an electric lift bike?
Some do, some do.
Right?
So this is
I don't know,
the,
I don't know about Illinois, but some do.
Yeah. I just sound like I really good this is the.
so this has been used as a look bike, like this particular tricycle. The electric tricycle.
I think so, I don't know if it's the same one that you guys used before, do you know, Steve? Okay, yeah.
This is modified.
Same vendor.
Oh, the same vendor.
That we have currently, is that what you're saying? Yes.
Oh, that's just modified to become electric.
Yes.
Got it, okay.
Electric bike is hooked up to it instead of a.
Great, and then, are there any like insurance needs that would be different? Because of either it being electric or because of its cost and it being out in the community?
I'm not sure, but we can explore that, if we need to get extra coverage, we can do that, and I don't think it'd be prohibitive, especially since we have the fund covering the bike. We add more insurance for things all the time, so, I'll make a note of that a little bit.
Yeah, it's just when I was looking through it, I was like, oh, I love electric bikes and I love the book bike there. I mean, I finally got it for the block party. I've tried like so many times. It's like checking the website daily, so I'm enthusiastic about it.
If those are the other significant concerns, I will call for a motion to approve this resolution.
So.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I believe we need a roll call vote for this. Will the secretary please take a roll call vote? This is yay or nay or abstain?
So. Okay, trustee McBride,
Yes.
trustee Fairfax,
Yeah.
trustee Foss,
Yes.
trustee Rogers,
Yeah.
trustee Bloom,
Yes.
trustee Conley,
Yes.
and trustee Chuckerty is also a yes.
That is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I believe that concludes our agenda for the evening. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Hearing no objection, you're adjourned.
Does this go on 110 or do we have to have a special?
Again,
We're getting a special answer.
I'm not sure.
We're thinking about getting. Our band is getting.
And we did the electric car for people that. But we think about that when you. Better on the lady from comments. So that's kind of the hand, okay.
See you later.
That'll be great.
The way I sleep.
I got it. Before you go, if you're going to ALA, we need you to register. Because they ask, it's like 4 pages long. They want to know what you're interested in, who your next kid is, who your emergency contact.
Really? Okay, look, this ain't a first.
See Jeremy over here before you go.
Can you send us information about the gala and where we're supposed to go? Yeah,
Oh, it's coming up. Reminder.
it's me. It's May 19th.
Oh, we're gonna do the sentence.
I need to.
Yeah, as the.
It has to be soon.